Welcome to Land Speed Legends, a podcast talking to the men, the women, the legends that make land speed racing great. Discover the stories of these ordinary people whose passion for land speed racing has made them legendary. And now, here's your host, the Bonneville Belle, the High Boy Honey, the Salt Princess, Allison Volk Dean.
Welcome to Land Speed Legends. Here today, I have the legendary John Levie. John is my first land speed motorcycle guest and my guest with the most records, over 100 of them. His first introduction into land speed racing would be as a spectator when his dad, Alan Levie, began taking him to the Bonneville Salt Flats at 2 years old. Him and his dad would continue to spectate as John adventured into other types of racing, including motocross, desert, boat, and dirt stock cars. In 2009, he started racing on the salt and set a record on a Honda 50 at 55 miles per hour. In 2012, he got into the Bonneville 200 mile per hour club on a sidecar at 218 plus miles an hour. And in 2018, he earned his blue 300 mile per hour chapter hat in a streamlined sidecar at 310 plus miles an hour. Hang on, this is going to be as thrilling as feeling the turbo starting to kick in. Thank you, John, for coming. I appreciate it. All the way from is it Elko? Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yes, I really do appreciate it. Let's talk about how you kind of got introduced into land speed racing. It sounds like when you were very young.
Yep, just a little kid.
Yes.
My dad, Alan, who's a huge part of my program today, he was taking me out there as a kid just to go spectate and see what was going on. And another good friend of my dad's, Scott Brown, Scott would join us just about every year too. And Scott was actually crewing with me on, I don't think he's ever really quit. He's just kind of in and out now. But in the early years, he was there every year and spent a lot of time with my dad and I out there too.
Nice. So, and you would go out there every year from then on out, like just kind of.
Yeah, we'd try to make it to Speed Week, but, depending on everybody's schedule, whichever race we could make it to is the one we went to.
Mm-hmm. So, would you guys just be spectating, or did you guys have people you would go see?
We really didn't know anybody that was involved with the sport at that time. We were, at that time in my life, we lived in Ely. So that's kind of a stopping point for a lot of the guys coming up from Southern California. And, we'd see them, we'd chat with them and kind of get to know them a little bit in town and then say, oh, well, we'll see you there. And that was about it. We never got wrangled in to be on a crew.
Oh, okay. So you guys were just like truly spectators.
True spectators.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I love it. I like that you went from a spectator to a racer. I think that's a great story. So what kind of cars were you into, motorcycle or cars more at the time?
I've always had a soft spot for motorcycles. Okay. So, in the early years, in the early 80s, I spent a lot of time just pedaling around the salt on my bicycle, looking at whatever was out there. And my dad and Scott would hang out under the shade, whatever we had for shade. In those days, there was no easy up. So it was however close you could hang out to the bottom side of the tailgate on a pickup truck and not get too salty when you were laying there. But it was a whole lot of bicycle riding for me as a young kid, just cruising around, checking things out, staying out of my dad's hair. Oh, yeah. Yeah, that was, a lot of bicycle riding out there when you were young. I do remember doing that too. I loved we just cruise the pits. Yep. So that's how we cruise in the pits. Yeah, and as a kid, it gets boring. So then you end up clear out by the mountains picking up 50 cal shells that were out there for who knows how long.
I know. I was always too afraid to go too far because my mom was like, if you get hurt, they will stop the races and everybody will be mad at you. And I was like, oh, okay. So, but.
One year I found a honey hole of 50 cal shells out there. So I took my shirt off and filled my shirt with shells and pedaled my bicycle back the 2 miles to the pits. And by the time I got back, I looked like a lobster. I was just burnt.
That's awesome. I love that. I like that you were quite adventurous and you were just out there on your own though. You didn't have any other kids that you're running around with.
No, rolling solo.
Nice. Well, yeah, that's awesome. And so, what motorcycles really caught your eye at that time?
Any of them. I hate to say it, but the noise that the Harleys made when they were going down the salt just sounded so good to me.
Yeah.
You know, the streamliners and the guys that were going really fast, it was cool to watch. But I think even in those years, I could identify more with the guys that were there on a sit-on bike, that were there, you know, just having fun, doing what they could do.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, to me, it was all cool. And I also had a thing for the roadsters as a kid.
Yes, I love the roadsters too. So, okay, well then keep going, and then what? You move into other types of racing. So maybe kind of go into what kind of racing you were doing.
Well, when I was really young, probably 4 or 5, is when my dad finally let me start racing motocross with him. And he would kind of bounce back and forth between desert racing and motocross, whatever was sounding like fun at that point in his life. And I was just his little racing buddy. So whatever my dad wanted to do, I was there with him. And in the early years of me on motorcycles, you know, I always had a 3-wheeler was like my first near-death experience. So yeah, I think anybody that's had a 3-wheeler can tell you how dangerous they are, but boy, were they fun.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, in the really young years before I moved on to motorcycles, that was my go-to. And then as we kind of progressed with my racing, I remember my dad got me a YZ60, and that little Yamaha was just the greatest thing ever. And, you know, I had a couple mini bikes before that, some JR50 Suzukis and just the little bikes that every little kid started out on in those days. And, then we got into racing a little bit of motocross here and there. And then we moved to Elko in 1989, and they have they used to have a really great track there that was local. And we had some really good riders around town, and that kind of became the thing that we did. We just raced the local motocross scene and had a good time doing that. And then after an injury in high school, that's when I moved on to desert racing. And desert racing was kind of more in my wheelhouse than motocross, because anytime you wanted to go ride a motorcycle in Elko on a track, you had to ride through the desert to get there. Mm. And I found that I was having more fun riding in the desert to get to the track than I was riding around the track. So we moved into desert racing in 1996. And actually the Utah series was my home series. It was the closest series to Elko, because at that time there wasn't Northern Nevada Racing Association doing deserts. It was all based out of Vegas. So this was where I came to race deserts, and I had a couple really good years in the desert racing scene and in my younger years. And then we got into boats.
You went from the desert to,
yeah.
So really quick, a question, is desert racing, is it just kind of like Baja racing? Is that would be like something similar, like where you're just kind of, is that like would be a...
Sure. Yeah. So there's markings on the course, and they just call it chasing the tape.
Nice.
They'll use like a pink tape, something that you can see pretty easy that contrasts against the natural terrain. And you just go as fast as you can in the terrain that they lay out. And they're usually 50-ish mile loops. And, you know, you'll do the 50-mile loops, usually do 2 of them. Sometimes they're the same loop. Sometimes they're different loops. So, you know, I did the desert thing for quite a while as a kid. And then I took a little break from desert racing, kind of getting into stock cars and boats. And then 10 years ago, I got back into desert racing again. And I got a AMA number 1 plate in the over 30 expert class, and AMA number 1 plate in the 250 expert class in the National Hare and Hound series, and a bunch of local series number 1 plates. And it was, I got back into the sport hard because I thought it would help me with my land speed racing, because you get so few opportunities to go practice your skill on the salt that, you know, in 2009, when I got back into the sport, I was pretty heavy into dirt track stock cars and boats, and it wasn't really doing anything for me in the land speed, you know, as far as the land speed skills go for maintaining your skills on a bike and being a good, safe rider. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to get back into the desert scene because it felt to me like it had the most crossover to land speed, probably more so than asphalt racing or anything like that. So I got back into desert racing pretty hard, and just kind of use that as a cross-training excuse with land speed.
Mm-hmm. So what made you, when you got into land speed, so you're racing all these different types of motorcycles and cars and boats, and so you decide to get back to try land speed racing. You hadn't done land speed racing at that point. So how did you decide to do that, or what was the...
Technically, I didn't even try. It just happened. So in Elko, we had a Honda dealer. His name was Harry Wolfley back in the 60s. And Harry was like a 2-digit Honda dealer. So definitely one of the first 100 in the States, but I think he was around number 17, if I remember right. So really early days of Honda. And Harry had a Honda 50 that he raced at the Salt in 1967. And the motorcycle clique in Elko is pretty tight. And, we all hang around together. It doesn't matter if you're 80 or 18. It's all kind of the same brotherhood of friends really right there. Cool. So Harry had this bike that he had raced at the Salt sitting under an oak tree at his property on the tree streets in Elko. And I asked Harry one day, I said, Harry, what are you doing with that motorcycle there? He says, well, it's probably going to go to the dump. I said, Harry, that's a significant piece of history right there. So he had a Hot Rod magazine, and there was a picture in Hot Rod of his bike, and then the picture right next to his bike was Burt Monroe's bike.
Oh my gosh, that's so cool.
I'm like, Harry, we need to restore this. He says, take it, do what you want with it. So I took the bike home and stripped it down, and it had a Del Orto carburetor on it with just an open Venturi and no air filter, nothing. And the reason it was under the tree is because it had blown up the clutch on a big whack of nitro. So he spun the guts out of it, and the bike was just set there to rot for, I guess that would have been around 2007 that I picked the bike up from Harry. So I took it home, sandblasted the chassis, painted it the same blue that it used to be, and I took 10 different paint swatches over to Harry. Is this the right color? Is this the right color? Because it wasn't a Honda color. It was just a color that he dreamed up, and that's the color that he painted the bike. And he had some really cool old factory Honda race parts on it. As a dealer, he had access to a lot of cool parts. So I rebuilt this bike, and in that time, Harry had sold his house on the tree streets, and he had moved out of town. And it's called Wild Horse Reservoir, where he moved up to. And I took the bike up there. And Wild Horse is on the highway that goes to Boise, from Elko to Boise. And there's not a whole lot of traffic up there. So I said, Harry, let's go run the bike on the highway. He says, that sounds like a great plan. So I had gas with me, and the bike was a runner. It was, it's just a super fun bike to play around with. And we were making some runs down the Salt. And Harry says, we probably ought to go run that. I said, I think we ought to. So we got signed up in 2008, and then we got rained out. So I had all winter to play with the bike and just make sure that it was ready to go. So in 2008, we actually took it to the Salt the day that we got rained out, and we ran the bike through tech, and they gave me the go ahead and told me what class to run. And Harry was just blown away that now there's a push rod class, and that's what it was. It was a push rod Honda 50. So we didn't think we were going to set a record with the bike in the 50cc A or M, F or G classes. It was just, let's go play with the bike. Well, then we look at what the bike's doing on the highway, and we're thinking, boy, we got a shot here. So
things just got interesting now that you can do this.
Yeah. So Harry was totally excited to go get his record back.
Oh, so fun.
And we did.
That's amazing.
So
what year was that? He got that record in 67?
Yeah, 1967 is the tech sticker on the bike.
Nice. And so that Honda had been sitting on that tree since 1967 is when he...
I think he actually blew it up in 68.
Okay. But close to that. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Sorry. I was wondering how long it was sitting there. I was thinking about that. So.
It was there for a long time.
Yeah.
And I think Harry actually moved a few times, and the bike just kind of moved with him. And then when he ended up on the tree streets is when it ended up outside. It was no longer worthy of a spot in the shop.
Oh, dear.
Yeah.
So anyways, you got back to it, and you got the record back.
So we set the record It was the first day of Speed Week. We qualified. Speed Week of 2009. And Harry and I were both just ecstatic. And we were in impound at, I think it was 49. It was just a hair over 49 mile an hour. So we're thinking we're pretty hot stuff. We're like, yeah, we're in impound. We're going to back this up in the morning. We're going to have a record. And then this guy comes up to us and he says, "Nice bike. Is that a show bike or a race bike?" And I kind of looked up at this guy and I'm thinking, who's this? And he sticks his hand out and he says, "Hi, I'm Scott Guthrie." Well, anybody that's read the motorcycle record book knows Scott Guthrie is probably somebody that you're going to want to listen to. So Scott gives us a couple of pointers. We make some changes and handlebars. He says, I had the same handlebars on it that Harry ran in 67, 68. And you stick your elbows out. He says, that's not a really aerodynamic position to have your elbows. You need to build a set of ram horn handlebars on it so you can get your hands in line with the forks and get your elbows tucked in. And he just gave me a bunch of pointers. So we were in impound, less than 50 mile an hour. And I said, well, what do you think, Harry? Should we pull the bike out and go make these changes? Harry says, we got all week. Let's do it. So I had a set of, actually it was just a stick of tubing that was in Elko. And I had a buddy bring the tubing over. And I had a welder there in case we had to make any changes. And we built a set of handlebars and we got rid of the number plates that were in a horrible location, remounted them where they weren't going to catch the wind. And after a whole week of playing with this little bike, we went 55.912, and that's where that record ended up. So, in the grand scheme, it was a 10% bump in speed. And that's when I thought, all right, whatever Scott's got to sell, I'm buying.
Yeah. Scott knows what he's talking about.
Yeah. So that marked the beginning of our relationship. And Harry was also, he knew exactly who Scott was. Mm-hmm. Although Harry hadn't raced at the Salt in years, he played around with a CB450 out there after the little Honda 50. And had always kind of been a part of it, came out to spectate. And Harry's business partner in Elko was Neil Thompson. And Neil was, he's a legend. That guy is, one of the fastest Studebakers to ever run at the Salt. And when you look at what he did in that time, so Harry had always kind of been a part of the Salt, even after he was done running there. So Harry knew that this is a guy that we need to listen to, and let's try to pick up some of what he's got to say, and be forever grateful for Scott for sharing his years of knowledge with some punk kid from Elko, Nevada.
Well, I'm sure he's happy to share it and pass that wisdom on. That's kind of what it's all about, right? To be able to do that. So I'm sure he's grateful that somebody was willing to receive it. So and I love Scott. He's such a good guy. Has great stories. And anyone who's ever been to a Bonneville 200 mile an hour club banquet knows that his little tales that he tells, or I don't know what you'd even call those, the stories. Yeah, the devotional. That's such a good way to put it. His little devotionals are so good. I love them. So I always look forward to him when he does talk. So, but so you do this is, but you keep continuing playing with some other smaller bikes, right? Before you kind of move on to
for years. So Scott told me, he says, we're going to make you a real Salt rider. He says, we're not just going to kick you loose on the biggest, baddest bike that I've got in the stable. Because at the time, he had Shane Stubbs riding some asphalt races, and they were going around 265 mile an hour on the asphalt in a mile and a half. So Scott had some pretty heavy bikes laying around that were looking for something to do at Speed Week. And
so you've connected with Scott at this point. You guys are kind of like... Yeah. So Scott was actually, in 2009, he was out there with Shane, who was running a Turbo Hayabusa. And Shane had some bad luck with the bike, and
I don't know exactly what was going on with it, but he was out and Scott was just kind of cruising the pits. And that's when he come through impound and found me and was like, well, I guess I'll hang around with a guy that's playing around with a Honda 50 because apparently I'm tired of hanging around with a Turbo Hayabusa guy.
That's so funny.
Shane is a great friend. He's actually just built the engines that's in my Streamliner right now, but we'll get onto that a little later.
Okay. All right. Well, let's talk a little bit more about moving on up, I guess, in the motorcycles.
So 2009, we set one record. 2010, we set all the records in the pushrod class for the little Honda 50. And Scott says, if you do a little clearancing on that chassis, on that what eventually turned into the M class chassis, he says, if you do a little clearancing, you can fit a Honda 90 engine in that same chassis. He says, you already got the bike built, just throw an engine in it. All right. So Harry had a Honda 90 engine laying around, and I grabbed that engine from him and did a little port work and some cam work and just some of Harry's little secrets that he had tucked away in the back of his brain from the 60s. And then we set the 100cc pushrod records as well. And I was having a really good time with the pushrod classes. To me, they were attainable. They weren't crazy fast. And I really just wanted to work my way up.
It was a good way to just gradually get into it, kind of. Yeah.
I have enough experience on a motorcycle to know that you can get yourself in trouble if you don't know what you're doing. And I didn't know what I was doing. So Scott was the first to point that out. He's like, there's a safe way to do this. And I think it was also good for Scott because he could follow me in his rental car on the return road while I was going down the course. And when I'd pull off the course, he'd say, the 1 foot that I could see was out in the wind a little bit. You need to get that foot tucked in, or you need to get that elbow pulled in, or you need to work on your form. And he coached me for years on the little bikes. And then we got into what Scott called the communist bikes, and they were some Chinese repops of old Honda pushrod motors, and that's what got us into the 125, 175, and 250 classes. And we built a modified and a special construction bike to run those Chinese engine motors, and we had turbos on them and nitromethane, and Harry had a fiberglass CB450 tank. I'm sure this thing was a collector's item. And Harry decided we ought to tip the can on this little bike. So we did. We gave it about 30% nitro, which I guess in the real world isn't even enough to make a difference. But we thought we were doing something because we're playing with nitro. And so we qualified in the fuel class with, I believe it was the 175 engine in the chassis at that time. And the next morning, we, obviously we dumped all the fuel out overnight because we didn't want it sitting in there, or ran a little gas through it. So we get to the start line to warm the engine up. And we fill it up with our little nitro and alcohol blend and started it on gas, and thing fires up. It's running great. It was a good cold morning, and I look down, there's just a puddle under the bike. Well, the nitro had eaten through the fiberglass tank. So I told
Plan has Scott, gone sideways.
I told Scott, we need to hurry up and get this down the course before I combust.
Oh my gosh, you still ran it. Oh my God. I'd be like, I'm out.
No, nitro's actually pretty hard to light up. So anyway, I made it down the course and pulled off, and the petcock was just drizzling fuel out of it like it wasn't even there, and the tank was just boiling fuel out of the sides, and it looked like I just got out of the shower when I got to the end of the course. But luckily we had about 3 gallons of gas in this CB450 tank that we just filled to the brim because we didn't know how much it was actually going to leak. And it was probably about 30% nitro, the rest alcohol and eroded fiberglass epoxy. So, but it ran. We set the record.
I was going to say, did you set the record? That's the real question.
Set the record.
Well, that's awesome. That's a great little story. First time running nitro.
That was also the last. Yeah.
Oddly enough.
I've set a bunch of fuel records, but they've all been on gas. So.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. We pit right next to the impound. We're not in there very often. I guess we are sometimes, but John lives there. I always tease him. I'm like, you might as well just not even bother setting up a pit. I don't think you do. Do you set up a pit anywhere else?
No, we just set up a pit in impound.
That's where you live. I mean, there's just no other point.
Well, either that or we're in town fixing something blown up. So
yeah.
It's one or the other. Checkers or wreckers.
Pretty much. Yeah, no kidding. Well, we say that, but that's not what happened.
Well, we came to break something.
That's Dallas's. We came to break something. Parts or records, but yeah. No, that's awesome. It's great. You guys are always there setting records. It's always fun to see what you're doing. So from this point on, when do you get into like the bigger bikes where you're starting to go a little bit fast? Is that the next one, or maybe there's something in between that I'm missing?
Well, that's pretty much the logical progression right there. Scott had looked at all the little bike stuff that we were doing, and up until 2013, I hadn't really rode anything bigger than a 250cc bike. So 2013 comes around, and Scott asks if I'd like to ride a bike that Jason McVicker had built a couple years prior. And it was a board and stroke Hayabusa that was in the 2-liter class. So just barely over 1650 cc's. And the bike was in Salt Lake at Heads Up at Scott Horner's shop. Mm-hmm. And he was doing some work on the bike in between races, in between Speed Week and World of Speed. And Scott asked if I would go grab the bike. And I thought, well, it's a funny request, but sure. So grab the bike, take it back to Elko, finish the little work that we needed to do, hung the bodywork back on it. All right, well, bring the bike back out for World of Speed. So I get the bike out there, and it was a really good time. Scott let me ride that bike, and that's when I thought to myself, oh, these little bikes, they're sure not going very fast. But, my saying is that any record takes up the same amount of space in the book. If it's a 50,
that's right. That's good. I like that.
If it's a 50 mile an hour, 50 cc record, it takes up the same space as my 310 mile an hour streamliner record.
That's awesome. I like that saying. That's a great way to look at it.
Significantly more work to set a 300 mile an hour record, but
yeah,
it's all relative.
Yeah, no, I agree. But it's somebody's out there working on their 50, like you worked hard on that little 50cc that 50 Honda trying to get it going, and somebody else is doing that, just progressing their way up as well. So
we did a lot of work to that little 50. We were pretty outside of the box on that bike, and I think that's what that little bike taught us a lot. Taught us how to think outside of the box and what we needed to do to be successful on the Salt. And that was kind of Scott's plan with the 2-liter bike. Was we thought we could get into the 200 mile an hour club with that. And so 2013, we run the bike in basically the same shape that Jason McVicker had set the bike up in, and it had a smaller turbo, and it was making about 240 horsepower. And it was a reliable 240 horsepower. Unfortunately, it was about 5 mile an hour off the 2 club minimum. So we changed classes, the opposite class that McVicker was running. I think he was running fuel, and I ran the 2-liter MBG class. So I was running gas, and it had a 210 minimum, and I'm running around 204, 205. So then we decide over the next winter we're gonna put some more ponies to this bike because we're just 5 mile an hour off. So we did. We ended up 440 horsepower with the next iteration of that stroker motor we used to call the bike the stroker bike. So we almost doubled the horsepower, and we went exactly the same speed the very next year. But it was no surprise to us because we were on some pretty bad salt that next year, and that bike was so much work, and it was not a whole lot of fun. It was fun to ride it, but when you look at the 1,000 hours you put into it for the 20 minutes that you get to spend on it, it's like, okay, I sure do like those little bikes.
Yeah.
So I never gave up on the little bikes at this point. It was, a lot of guys, once they hit the the Hayabusa phase, they forget all about their Honda 50 phase. And I told Scott, I said, I'd sure like to play around with some of your little two-stroke stuff because I'm a two-stroke guy at heart. I love the Yamaha TZs, and that's where Scott made his mark on the Salt, was with the TZ 750 platform. And, although he did have some success in the earlier years with the Harleys, but I talked him into sending me a TZ 350, and we played around with the 350 for a couple years and had a lot of fun with that. But I wanted to get into the sidecar side of the world too, because looking at the rule book, we were noticing a lot of things that you can't do with a sit-on chassis motorcycle that you can do with a sidecar. And we had been noticing John Stagey's bike. He called it La Poderosa. And this bike was dirty fast. And he had put a post on landracing.com that the bike was for sale. And I think Scott and I must have clicked on that button at the same time. And I said, "Hey, Scott, what do you think of this?" And he says, "Well, I've already called him." I said, "All right." So about a week later, John Stagey's bike showed up at my shop, and we're looking at this thing, and we purchased the bike from John, and that was a great investment for our team, because that really, the sidecar bike opened up a whole different world to us as far as what we could do with different engine platforms. We were either playing with the little push rods singles or the TZ 2-strokes, but now we have this Hayabusa powered sidecar, not a streamliner. It's just a regular sidecar, but it looked like a streamliner. This thing just looked fast sitting there. And we saw a few things that we wanted to change on the bike aerodynamically, just some ideas that my dad had thought would improve the speed of the bike with the same basic engine package in it. So we did. We made a different nose cone, and the lessons that we learned on the Stroker Hayabusa was, we learned a lot about the Hayabusa engine platform, wiring, and just the little nuances of the Hayabusas.
Is this the first time you kind of messed around with the Hayabusa?
The first time with a naturally aspirated, pretty much stock powered Hayabusa engine is what was in the open bike. And we end up going about the same speed that we're going on this board stroked turboed sit-on chassis bike. And then we knew we were onto something with the sidecar stuff when that bike showed up. So we knew what our coefficient of drag was and how much horsepower we needed to go X amount of mile an hour. And it's like, okay, this is the ticket into the 200 mile an hour club here. So I guess it would have been, I think I was a year off on my Hayabusa story. That was 2012.
Yeah, I think so too. But
No, 2011 was the first year that we ran the Hayabusa, because 2012 is when I got into the 200 mile an hour club. Yep. 2012 at 204.876 at World of Speed was my first foray into the Busa. So then the next year, 2012, is when we started playing with the 1650. Nope, I'm wrong again. I got to look at my notes.
So I have here that 2012 you got in, and it was a 218.
It was 218 420 in the 1650 sidecar class. Somehow that didn't make it onto my list of important dates here.
What was the record that it was originally before you?
I'm not 100% sure, because it was... Stagey was playing around with, when he had the bike originally, he had a 1300cc pretty stock Hayabusa engine in it. And then the last couple of years that he played with it, he took the same basic engine and he put a 2 mil bore kit on it. So it made it like just barely over 1350. It was like a 1379 or whatever that works out to. And that put him into the 1650 class. And John had went, I think he was around 216 with his gas record. And I ran the fuel class with a couple little aerodynamic changes and probably a little better salt. And I ran 218.420. And that's what got me into the 200 mile an hour club right there was Stagey's bike, with a couple little tweaks on our end. But the real props go to John for building just a super cool design.
Yeah.
And it was so far out of the box. Like that bike was just light years ahead of anything anybody else was doing in the sidecar classes.
Yeah. And so the sidecar classes, you just kind of saw that there was maybe an opening. And that's a lot of people do that, kind of see that there's maybe an opening for, you can kind of just see in certain classes, like, okay, I can do this, like you just look at the classes that you can work with. And it sounds like that's kind of what you did with the sidecar.
Yeah, exactly.
There's just like a lot more.
And then the other side of that was the safety side of it. That bike was so stable because it's long. That bike's almost, about 18 feet long. So it's long and it's low and it's narrow, but it's got the sidecar wheel over there keeping you upright.
Yeah.
So, you can do some dumb things in that bike and it's pretty forgiving.
Is that the one that you rate? Like that's the one that you see now that's the sidecar? Is that the same one?
Yep, the open bike. Yeah.
Okay.
It's gone through some significant changes since those days. We've ran. So my dad decided he wanted to get into the 200 mile an hour club too. And I said, well, you're not just going to walk into it. You're going to earn your licks here. So, we started playing with some, again, Honda push rods. It was called a CX 650 turbo, and it was, Honda's real first foray into fuel injection and turbo motorcycles from the factory. So we found a couple of them, and I built one for me and one for my dad. We built one for the A class and one for the M class, and they both went exactly the same speed because they're shaft driven. So we were just bumping the rev limiter going down the course, and we did all the little tricks that you can do to a shaft driven bike to make it go faster, but we ended up around 133 to 136 mile an hour every single pass like clockwork. So my dad got real comfortable going 136 mile an hour that first speed week, and I believe he set 4 records on that bike. He set the production record, which the guy there was another guy that was running the same class on the same bike, and he protested us because we had aftermarket brake lines on the bike. And it's like, well, the original brake lines were so roached, they wouldn't flow any brake fluid through them. So we ended up getting kicked out of impound on that one. So we had to go back to Elko and grab brake lines that wouldn't move any fluid through them. So I threw the brake lines on the bike, and my dad requalified about 4 mile an hour faster than the guy that was running in the same class. And we set the record. And that was pretty cool. It was my dad's first record. And then we changed the bike from production and put it into modified. And then we took the fairing off. And so we might have set 5 records at that speed week on that same bike.
Wow.
So he's thinking, this is pretty cool. This is something that I could do.
Confident.
Yeah. So then we put him in the open sidecar bike, and that bike, by this time, it had a new name. It was called the Proboscis because of, kind of looks like an appendage on an elephant. It's not a very good looking bike, but it's fast, and that's what counts. So we take the 2-liter engine that was in the Turbo Hayabusa, and we converted it to a naturally aspirated engine. And then the bike was, it was a torque monster. It was just a really fun engine to play with, naturally aspirated. And we were having a great time with that stroker motor. And my dad had set a record at 199 mile an hour. And I said, Dad, you're 1 mile an hour off here.
Was it just an open record at 200? Is that for the club on that one?
No, I think there was an existing record. I believe that was a Kenny Lyons record. And if I remember right, it was like a 99 mile an hour record. So I think my dad put 100 mile an hour on that record on his first outing.
Okay. So he was qualifying for the 2 club.
Yeah. He was just looking to get into the club at this point.
Gotcha.
So he goes 199. And I said, Dad, I think we should just change classes. Let's go from like gas to fuel and at least get this one in the book. And it's there.
Yeah.
It's not in the 2 club book, but it's a pretty darn good record. So we did. We changed classes, and he qualifies the next day at like almost 220.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, he's starting to get the hang of this bike. So we, the next morning, we're getting ready to push him off because he just run behind the bike. It made so much torque that it would pull away from the line, no problem. So I was on one of the other bikes behind him, getting ready to back up my record that morning. But the real point of that day was to get my dad into the 200-mile-an-hour club. So I'm starting behind him, and I don't even remember what bike I'm on. It might have been, I think it was the TZ350 at that point. And I'm pushing my dad. I'm running as fast as I can, and he dumps the clutch, and I hear a quang, and it was the chain. So the chain had broke, but luckily we had the trailer sitting right there, and we had a spare chain in the trailer. So we jack the back of the bike up, we throw a chain on it, and maybe, might have taken a total of 5 minutes. And our good buddy from Elko, Travis Munster, was there with us, and he's just ripping and tearing, getting the bodywork off the bike. I had the grinder out, making the chain the right length. We threw the chain on the bike. We never pulled the bike off the course. We did it right there.
Really?
On the course.
That's pretty quick. Nobody got mad, huh? Nobody was like, what are you doing?
The only person behind him was me, and I wasn't going to say a word.
Oh, okay.
So we throw the chain on, and it had damaged the clutch slave cylinder, so we had no clutch at this point. I said, well, just put it in gear and hit the start button.
Oh my God.
So he takes off, and the bike's going, and finally it lights up. And I hear him shift in a second. Sounding really good. Third, fourth, fifth, sixth. And, that big stroker engine with that open pipe just sounded so good going down the salt. And we heard the time on the radio, and he was a little bit slower. It was around 210. So I think he qualified with a 220 and backed it up at a 210. And he ended up with around a 215 entrance into the 2 Club.
Nice.
So, at that point, it didn't matter what we did the rest of Speed Week. It was just
so fun.
Yeah, it was awesome that he was going to finally get his red hat. After all those years hauling me out there to the salt.
Yeah.
And watching, it was super cool at first just to have him be a part of it with me. Mm-hmm. And then to get into, such a prestigious club, it was so cool to me to be able to share that with my dad.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that. What a great memory to have with your dad and about your dad. And you guys sound like you guys are quite the little duo anyways. You two running around.
He is my best buddy.
Yes.
And we have a joke that he's the brains and I'm the balls. So when it comes time to do something dumb, he's usually the guy that comes up with the idea, and then he talks me into doing it.
Why don't you go try that? That's not.
Yeah, we actually did have some other very bad ideas in land speed racing. We built a twin-engine Hayabusa that handled kind of like a shopping cart. It was probably the worst handling motorcycle to ever hit the Salt Flats, and this was back in the days when Pork Pie was out there.
Oh,
and he had a great picture of that bike sideways. It looked like I was flat tracking. So we take that bike up to Ogden when the Darko wind tunnel was up there, and Mr. Tom Birkland came with us, and we had that bike in the tunnel the same time that we had the streamliner in the tunnel, and we'll get on the streamliner here in a minute, but we ended up really discovering that bike probably shouldn't go over the speed limit. It was just so aerodynamically wrong. Everything was wrong about that bike. And Pork Pie, he says, he told my mom, who's also very instrumental in my land speed career. Pork Pie told my mom, he says, you better not let John ride that bike anymore. That bike is scary. And he showed her the picture of you can see the belly pan of the bike in the picture, and you're not supposed to see that at 220 mile an hour. I could never get the bike to go straight enough, long enough to ever set a good time with it. So now that bike's a really good paperweight.
So what did you do with it? It's in your shop?
I keep telling my dad I want to make the changes to this bike to make it go faster, and he keeps telling me that is never going to happen. You're just going to sit around and look at that bike. What it's become really good for is noise-making competitions. We have car shows and motorcycle shows, and there's nothing like a twin-engine. Basically sounds like a V8 Hayabusa.
Yeah, that's fun.
we put a set of megaphone exhaust on it, and that thing it makes an awesome sound.
Yeah, that's cool. I like that.
13,000 RPM of the bike just screaming in neutral, floating the valves.
Yeah, and everyone loves it, right?
Except for the Harley guys, they get really annoyed.
Oh,
yeah.
Right.
So when it comes to who wins a noise-making contest, it's always based off of the crowd's applause. So the Harley guys will applaud the Harleys, and then everybody else will applaud the bike that sounds like a Formula One car revving up.
Yeah, that's one. Well, I like Harleys too, the sound of Harleys. But,
yeah, they sound pretty good, don't
they? Yeah, they do.
Especially on a big whack of nitro.
Mm-hmm. So, when so you got your dad in the club. So have you set your sights on going faster at this point? Like, or where are you at in this journey? Well,
I've always told myself that whatever we accomplish has got to be fun. And I don't want to turn this sport into work. So we decided, my dad and I, that we both wanted to go faster, and we wanted to build something fairly simple that was going to be a fun build that we could work on together. He lives just down the road from me. I could almost throw a rock and hit his house, so it's pretty easy to get down to his shop, and we build a lot of stuff in his shop together. And we decided we were going to build a streamliner because it was a sidecar streamliner. We decided it was something that we could kind of copy a lot of Stagey's ideas that he had built in the probe, and just basically build a same version of the open sidecar bike that we were playing with. That was just a tried and true platform, but with a roll cage in it. So that's what we did in 2014, that winter. And we had a lot of fun building the bike. And I'd almost say it's as much fun building as it is actually racing these bikes, because the metalwork side of it, it was the first time I had ever TIG welded, and that whole body's made out of aluminum. And, it was cool to learn a new skill and just something to kind of further my, I guess,
skills.
Yeah, just to get a little more well-rounded in things to do in life.
Yeah.
And I probably burned 100 pounds of filler on that bike before I ever laid down a decent bead. But it was fun, and then we get rained out the next year, and that was a bummer deal, because we have this platform sitting here, and we're thinking, my God, this thing's just going to be the fastest thing ever. So we're rained out.
What year is this? Is this like 2016? Is that right? About right there?
So
I'm trying to think of when we were rained out. That around then.
16, we had Speed Week. So that would have been 15.
15, okay.
2015,
all right.
We had no racing whatsoever.
Yes, all of them were canceled.
Yeah.
Just like this year.
Yep. So that was a bummer deal.
Yeah,
but
it is a bummer.
It's what happens when you race outside. Sometimes it's sunny, sometimes it's raining. Yeah.
So it gets canceled, and so you guys now have all winter to think about.
All winter to ponder what we're going to do with this bike. And we made a couple more changes with it over the winter, and we built a couple engines, and 2016 rolls around, and we go to Speed Week with this brand new unproven platform, and we decide we're just going to start throwing engines at it. So we started with I believe it was the 1350 engine. Just a naturally aspirated stock Hayabusa engine, and we played with that one, and we went pretty fast with it. Let's see, what do we do? 260? No, that was with the blown motor.
John has a spreadsheet here for all his records, by the way, just to try to keep track of what he did. Getting
the dates and stuff straightened out is important. Looks like we started out with probably the 1650 engine. That's right. That's what it was. We had the 1650 engine, and we decided we were going to run fuel. Just the class fuel. We were running it on gas, so we took the 1650 engine out of the probe, and we threw it in the liner. And we just made a couple passes with the bike, kind of learning it, and we set a record at 162. And that was, totally underwhelming to us. But I don't even think we got it into fourth gear. We were just pulling the parachute and learning. So that was fun. Then we decide, okay, we're comfortable with the bike now. So we changed classes, went to the gas class, and we went 221 with it. And that was, so we went 218 with the same engine in the open bike and 221 in the streamliner. And we didn't think the streamliner was going to be that much faster because we were basically running the same amount of horsepower. And we knew we were horsepower limited in the open bike. So really we needed to put some more power to it if we were going to go any faster. So that same year, well, I guess at Speed Week, we took the 1650 out, put the 2-liter engine in it, and ran 237 and 238 in gas and fuel. Then World of Speed rolled around, and when we were building the bike, we built it so that we could fit our existing turbo kit off the stroker in the streamliner. And we ended up going 273 at World of Speed with the blown 1350 engine. So we were feeling pretty good. It was that bike had kind of proven itself right there, and we're thinking, oh wow,
we're only like 30 miles.
Yeah, we're pretty close to what what we would need to get a blue hat instead of a red hat. So 2017 rolls around, and we go around 220 with it.
Yeah, and these are not the best years for salt conditions that you're on. What is it like on a bike with the salt conditions this way? Because it wasn't great. Not a lot of people were setting records at this. I mean, it wasn't, people were setting records, but it wasn't like it had been in the past.
Yeah, that was, we really picked a bad time to bring out a new platform that was rigid suspension. The course was just... It was so rough. One time,
but it sounds like you're doing good on it. You're proving. Yeah,
but I almost knocked myself out in the bike. One pass, I hit a pothole out there, and it hit so hard that the world just came in around me. It was like all I saw was a little tiny pinhole.
Bring it back.
Yeah, breathe, open it up, and it did. It came back to me, and
oh my gosh.
And that's
terrifying.
When we spent a couple of years there thinking, what do we need to do? Do we need to put suspension in this bike to ever go fast, or what are we going to do here? Yes. So we kind of just muddled around with the bike in 2017, and it was, the course was so rough. The salt was hard, but it was rough.
Yes. Did you put suspension in?
No, we didn't.
Oh, you never did?
No,
huh?
we decided if the course is going to be rough, we're going to play with little bikes.
Okay.
So that same year, I built Scott a little 175 pushrod bike, and Scott come out and he set some records.
Fun.
That year in 2016 as well, and it was like, okay, Scott wants to set records for every decade of his life, and he got
I love it.
He got a few records that year. He set a 58 mile an hour record on a sidecar pushrod blown gas Lifan, the little communist bike. He called it the Hindenburg. So the Hindenburg went 58 for one record, and then he swears something happened to the bike because he went 17 mile an hour on his very next record that he set with it. But I'd ride the bike around. There's nothing wrong with it. I think he was being funny. He was setting a 17 mile an hour record because he wanted the slowest record in the book. So he got it.
That's awesome.
That's a record in itself right there. Slowest record in the book.
Yeah.
He got a twofer on that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
I love Scott. He's still setting records. It must be why he keeps just doing new things, because he looks so young for his age. Like he looks when somebody told me his age, I was like, no, he looks really good. He must just be that get on a motorcycle and keep racing.
Well,
throughout your years. Maybe that keeps you young.
Yeah, you don't get old and quit riding motorcycles. You get old because you quit riding motorcycles.
That's right.
And
I think Scott's figured it out.
Wait till you see his 90th decade records. He's gonna be real awesome. Fast.
I love it.
Maybe then he can set a 14 mile an hour record and a 62 mile an hour record.
Oh, it's funny. He just keeps getting slower.
Trying to talk him into bringing out one of the TZ 750s, but I don't think he wants me to saw one of those in half for him. I have a habit of doing that to motors.
Darn it.
Yeah.
So you guys go back to the little motorcycles though because the salt is bad. Yeah. Unless you had a diesel truck running those years, right. Like those ones, if the salt ever goes bad, buy a diesel truck. Those things were like just setting records like crazy.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, we actually moved on to a dirt bike in 2017. We took a Yamaha YZ125 and put an Athena 144 top end kit on it and hung a little Aerocharger turbo on it. And we were setting records around 90 mile an hour, which is
setting those records.
Yeah, we needed to do something. So, we were playing around with a little 175, and we did go 224 with a naturally aspirated Hayabusa engine in the Streamliner that year. But the course was just so rough that we knew there was more there. But by this point, we really wanted to just continually set fast bike of the meet, even though it didn't at that time mean a whole lot in the BNI races. But the Utah Club, USFRA, has the coolest fast bike trophies. And Dan Warner, the guy is one of the most talented people I've ever met. He builds these sandcast historical land speed racing motorcycles, and that's what USFRA gives away every year for the fastest bike. And 2010, I think it was 2010, one of the Black Art Racing guys won that trophy, and I told my my mom was sitting next to me at that awards banquet. I said, one of these days I want to get that trophy. So we did. We finally started setting fast bike at the USFRA meets, and I believe that was around 2012 when I started getting my first fast bike trophy, and I've got them ever since. That just became my goal for the year, was to win Dan's trophies.
That USFRA trophy?
Yeah.
So you've gotten it ever since then, huh?
Yeah, it's the coolest crazy trophy.
They are cool.
We have a little trophy case in our living room that's for the trophies that are the most memorable to me, and the ones that, not just mean the most, but the ones that have a story that go along with them. So we keep those kind of front and center, and if anybody comes over, I like to give them a rundown on what each one of these trophies mean. And it's, from my 218 420 trophy when I got into the 200 mile an hour club, that's a significant one. All of the fast bike trophies from USFRA, and then just this 2021, SCTA announced that they were going to give a fast motorcycle trophy as well, and it was in memory of one of my good friends, Ralph Hudson. And I'm sitting right here looking at a picture of Ralph on the 2021 book. And Ralph and I spent a lot of time in impound together. And I told my dad, I said, we really need to get that trophy. I want to be the next name on that list behind Ralph. And we were. I was super proud of that. So
yeah, he was a stud.
He was really an innovator.
Yeah.
The guy is light years ahead of everybody else in the, kind of the regular sit-on chassis motorcycle aerodynamics. And on top of that, he was making killer horsepower. So,
and he was so nice. I'll just tell you a quick little story. My little guy, Wyatt, the day before he crashed, when he was in impound, Wyatt likes to go get people's signatures and likes to get, he likes to get, and he likes to just go get the signatures of people in the 2 Club book. And so he went to go over there to get Ralph's, and cause he'll just go over to impound cause our pits are right there, and Ralph's just said, and he's over there just working on his bike, and he's like, you know what, let me get you something. And he took his time with Wyatt, and I'm going to start like kind of tearing up, but he took his time with Wyatt, and he just went and he dug through, he had to like find something. He went and he dug, and he found him a pin, like a little, and so the Wyatt he cherishes it. It's on his hat, and it's a little, his little pin. And it was just sweet how he took his time to go do that in the middle of impound, where it can be a very stressful situation, where you're trying to get stuff done in a certain time. And Wyatt always has that memory of him, and I do too. And it was just a really neat memory. So anyway, it's just a little tribute to him on what a cool guy he was. Yeah.
And the other side of that trophy is Sam Wheeler. And going back to my younger days out there, I will always remember the Easy Hook Streamliner and just how memorable that bike was to me. And, in the early days when I was playing around on dirt bikes, I spent a lot of time on Kawasaki's. And Sam's Kawasaki Green, Easy Hook Streamliner, that bike just always caught my eye. And the few times that I saw him run, it seemed like Sam was one of those guys that would wait for the salt to be absolutely perfect before he would run. There might be a speed week where he'd show up and the bike wouldn't go down the salt because it wasn't what he wanted. He was waiting for those perfect conditions. And that's another takeaway that I got from Sam is there's times to run a bike and there's times that you don't have to.
Yeah.
The paycheck's the same for all of us out here. We're all going in the hole in this sport. So
yeah,
it's got to be fun and it's got to be safe.
Yeah.
And unfortunately we lost two of the biggest heroes of the sport, to the sport. And that's, it's a real shame to think about what could have been accomplished by those two in the future, but we'll always have what they did in the past, and we can always look back on the lessons that they both gave us, and all the times that Wyatt's come around the impound, and, can I have you sign this? And if anybody doesn't have the time for a kid to just sign something for them, or whatever you got laying around, it's
I mean, and just to take the extra time, even just to go dig through that, I don't know. It just took him probably 10 minutes, and it was just, time that was
all we can hope for is that this sport is going to continue in the future. And maybe one of these kids that we, take the 5 minutes to talk to them.
That's right.
Maybe that's going to be enough to keep the future of the sport going. 'Cause if you look at the kind of the mean age of the sport, there's not a lot of young blood in it.
Yeah.
And, for a lot of years out there, I felt like I was the young guy at 30 years old. And, in the motorcycle world, dirt bike world, I was over the hill. It was, I was well beyond my prime. And once you start racing the age classes on a dirt bike, it's like you've just signed yourself off to 50th overall at a desert race. And, and in land speed racing, it doesn't matter who you are. We've got guys on very limited budgets, guys on huge budgets.
That's right.
And we all end up with the same space in the record book if you can make it out of impound.
Yep.
So that's
right. And I think that Ralph did understand that. That's why he took the time to do that, is that you do have that younger generation that you want to kind of cater to and encourage them and make it feel, and Wyatt, his hat's downstairs. I'll show it to you when we're done, but he has a hat that has a bunch of pins on it, and that one's front and center, and he's very proud of that pin that he has on there. So, but and it shows, like I said, I just think he understood that, just to take that extra time. So it's very cool. But, so, let's keep going on this. We haven't gotten even to the 3 chapter yet. We haven't even gotten you there.
Awesome. Well,
where are you?
Let's get into the 3 chapter. Yeah. So I guess we're at around 2018 at this point.
Yeah.
This is where my brother from another mother, Jesse Brown, comes into the picture. And, Jesse had posted on Facebook, he's building this turbo Buell. And he was talking about intercoolers and how he doesn't need one. And I had just casually commented, you might want to double think that. And we had a little conversation offline. Finally, it was like, all right, dude, we need to talk. So we started discussing turbos and 'cause we had played around with quite a bit of turbos on the smaller displacement snowmobile stuff. In Elko, that's what you do. We get a lot of snow there in the winters, and we had played with a lot of snowmobiles, and it seemed like that was always our limiting factor, was not having an intercooler on a turbo in the early days. We couldn't run the timing. We were limited on horsepower, and Jesse and I chatted about that for quite a while. And then, we were just kind of bouncing ideas off of each other. And finally he came up with an ingenious idea on how to actually get one to fit on his Buell. And, he did it. And, he's setting records at almost 200 on a Buell.
What was the ingenious idea?
Oh, well, that I can't share with you. That's top secret.
Top secret.
It's top secret.
You'd have to kill me afterwards.
I'd have to kill you. But he's actually on to Rev 2 of that whole design, and it's on Facebook. I'll show you a picture. It's the work that he's done on this thing is just beautiful. He's got CNC milling machines, and it's actually, it didn't start out a CNC milling machine. It was just an old, I think it was a Lejeune manually operated mill, and he converted this whole system to run on CNC, and he'll just chalk up a block of aluminum and let it run all night long, and what he ends up with are works of art. So, we just started bouncing ideas off each other about his bike, about my bike, and we had a pretty strong connection. And I'm thinking, this guy, he thinks a lot like me. He's not into spending huge amounts of money to go fast. We want to do the most with the least. And he's really hooked on this Buell platform. It was his daily rider, the bike that he rode around. He used to live in Ogden. And in those days, he had a bike, a Buell that was his street bike, and he put 1 billion miles on that thing just cruising around. So he's always had a soft spot in his heart for the Buell. And I told him, I'm like, Jesse, I could get you in the 2 Club on the open sidecar bike in 2 passes. You just got to go ride it. He's like, no. It doesn't have the place in my heart that getting in the club on a Buell does. So he's going to beat this Buell up until he gets into the club on it, and more power to him. I love the guy for his tenacity. He'll get there, but most people that are on the land speed forums on Facebook have seen this guy's work, and it's just beautiful. He's built an anodizing system in his garage that I think it's in buckets, maybe like those Husky buckets you get from Home Depot. And this guy, he's genius. He's a mad scientist.
What's his last name?
Jesse Brown.
Jesse Brown.
JB Tech.
Okay.
Yeah. So he does some crazy stuff, and when 2018 rolled around, I'm like, I'm pretty much at the limit of my technology. I don't know how I'm going to get this next 30 mile an hour. And Jesse had come up to Elko, and we looked at what the platform currently was, and just to bounce some ideas off his head, because he has a business where this is what he does. He helps people achieve their goals, and his TIG welding is just beautiful. Mine is good enough to cover with Bondo after you grind it, but his is something you want to look at when you open the hood of a hot rod. So we spent a good, 2-3 weeks in the garage just building away on a new turbo system, and we had moved on to a new electronics package, because at the time, in 2017, I was using a stock ECM with a Dynojet piggyback with an MC Express controller on the secondary injectors. So this was like super old school, just not, we had pretty much peaked out for what we could do for reliability, and we were breaking parts. And the whole time Jesse's saying, you got to go to a standalone fuel injection system, and we got to be able to actually log. In those days, in the early days, I was logging with just a standalone logger that was cumbersome, hard to work. Occasionally it wouldn't log when we needed it to log, and we would miss some very important data. Usually about the time that we were blowing an engine up, we would say, well, what happened? I don't know. The logger didn't work. The old DL32 didn't do anything. So we were kind of SOL on a couple of those situations, but Jesse had the cure. And at the time, he was pushing the Mega Squirt ECMs pretty hard, and we rewired the whole bike. And his wiring job was just beautiful. I mean, this thing it's a full-on race harness in the bike. And I had a dash, like an actual functional dash, where in the early days we had a Hayabusa dash in the bike. And it worked, but it wasn't intuitive. We couldn't show ourselves different channels. And Jesse had built a Raspberry Pi-based dash with a 3D printed chassis that we could mount to the handlebars. Wow. And I mean, the thing was so cool. Yeah. And we get the bike out to the salt and we tear the clutch out of the bike. We break the cases. We just destroyed the motorcycle at Speed Week. But, we'd go 295 and break the bike. And then we'd go 297 and break the bike. So that next year, 2018, Speed Week was a real learning curve. Luckily, I'm 104 miles from the start line at home. So we could go home and completely rebuild an engine and be back the next morning. And I had enough spare parts laying around from all the other Busa engines that we were playing with that we could really start throwing parts at it until we figured out what our weak links were and what was causing our failures. And we started making enough horsepower that we tore the counter shaft out of the back of the bike. The cases just broke in half, and we ended up with some parts there to strengthen it up. And World of Speed rolls around after a dismal Speed Week. We just, we didn't do anything besides break parts. Yeah.
Oh, that's the worst.
So World of Speed rolls around in 2018 and we went 302 out the back door on a pass. And, I'm like, okay, we're there. And the next pass we go like 315 out the back door. And we're getting data. We're getting a really good tune in it. And at this point, Megasquirt had flown their design engineers out to help us with what we were doing. And the back of our trailer looked like an electronics manufacturing facility. Wow. These guys had soldering irons going, and they were making all these changes internally to the ECM. And we had some kind of really rough prototype parts in it to begin with from Megasquirt and Jerry Hoffman that owns DIY Auto Tune, who's the manufacturer of Megasquirt, was just backing us 100% of the way until we achieved our goal. And you'll be forever grateful to Jerry on that one for getting us set up. And finally at World of Speed, we had a 310.374 record. And that's what got me into the 300 mile an hour chapter. And, that's not really what got me into the 3 chapter. That's what got all of us into the 3 chapter with my name in the book. There was a whole lot of people that went into that. Without Jesse and my mom, my dad, my wife. Wife has played a huge part in this. She lets me live in the garage for months on end, working on bikes and
I know.
If I can talk her into come out and to hold something while I make a tack, it's like, you are worth your weight in gold.
No, she is so sweet and so supportive and always happy to be there and
better than I deserve. That's for sure.
That's right. I think so.
During COVID, we had a shortage of helpers at Speed Week. And the motorcycle tech guys called and they said, could you help us out? We're short on manpower and we don't have anybody to run the trailer. I said, yeah, I think we can handle that. So Scott Mattern, who I'm not sure what his role was, but it was maybe chief motorcycle inspector at the time. He says they're basically going to have no presence at Speed Week in the trailer. And that, that's where I
think I remember. Yeah.
That's where everybody's wives were that were helping the administrative side of the motorcycle event to even happen. And I said, let me talk to my mom and my wife about this and let's see if we can figure something out here. So I asked my wife, Michelle, I said, what do you think of running the trailer at Speed Week? She says, well, I spent enough time at the trailer. I think I have half an idea what to do, but the other half, I'm going to need a cheat sheet or something. All right. So I talked my mom into the same thing and she was pretty easy about it. She was like, well, I'm going to miss you guys running because I'm going to be stuck in a trailer. But I think we've taken enough from the SCTA that it's time that we help out a little bit. So they ran the trailer in 2019.
Yeah. Probably fun talking to everyone too. I like that kind of stuff, getting to know people's stories. And
when it's good for me as a competitor to learn a little more of the back end of the whole event. It's like I've always been just using out there, and I've never been giving. And it felt good to help my mom and my wife that year when they were running the trailer. And it was just super cool for all of us to learn that side of it. And if we ever got the ask again, we'd be there in a heartbeat.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. Well, maybe now you'll get asked now that you've put that out there every year. And they're like, wait a minute, you've just signed us up for something we didn't agree to. No, it's fun. I've done, worked the 2 Club and the Save the Salt, and I've always enjoyed it.
Yeah, the 2 Club is awesome. That's a super fun group to work with. It's
that's a
as
fun
you
job.
know, I've been on the board as kind of the motorcycle guy for years now, and that's something that I'm just beyond honored to even have a say in. When somebody says, "Hey, what do you think about this?" I feel honored that I even get asked the question.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, when you are the motorcycle guy, Scott was the one before too. That's kind of funny. He was the motorcycle guy before.
And he's always my go-to.
Yeah.
If there's ever a real tough question, it's like, "Hey, Scott, what do you think of this?" When you look at the guy's experience for how many years he's been out there, he knows why things are the way they are in the rule books. And half of the rules are in the book because of something that he did. So there's a lot of Guthrie rules out there. And
yeah.
A lot of the questions that we have for people getting in the 200-mile-an-hour club are usually rules related. And we'll want to kind of bounce a FIM versus SCTA ruling to see kind of, what the differences are and what one allows versus the other. So, Scott's always kind of the historian there, and he's super sharp.
He knows his stuff.
So although I might be the bike guy on the board, he's also he's the silent partner.
Yeah, which is good. That's good. To have that backup.
Not really silent, but he is a partner.
Yeah, there's nothing silent about Scott. I'm just the girl on the board. That's just me. No, I'm just kidding. Just kidding. Not just the girl. But and you're the only motorcycle person on the board, right?
Yep, right. Currently.
I don't think there's ever been...
Valerie was on the board for a while.
Oh, so that was when there was 2 on the board at one time. But yeah, okay. Well, so this is get you in the 3 chapter. We got there. We got to the 3 chapter story.
We did.
Did we get there? Did we?
We did. That's pretty much it.
We got there?
Yep. Now we just want to, the goal is really to keep putting records in the 200-mile-an-hour club minimums book. We want to either beat the minimum, or we want to beat the existing record for whichever classes we think we want to go after. And that's just the current goal right there is how many 2 club entries can we get? We have 12 currently. I have 12. My dad's, he's got one too. So, John Stagey, he's got one on the open sidecar bike. So,
is there anybody else that you would want to ride the bike to maybe get get a hat?
Yeah, but nobody wants to ride the bike.
Yeah.
They're like, how do you ride this?
Somebody asked me one time, like, if I wanted to ride their bike. I was like, oh, no. Oh, hell no. I don't want to ride a bike 200 miles an hour. No, thank you. I don't ride motorcycles normal. Not like on a regular. I'd have to ride it on the regular to go 200.
Yeah. Yeah. It takes a special breed to want to kneel down with your knees are literally 2 inches off the salt. Going 200-mile-an-hour plus. Yeah. And there's not a whole lot of takers. So.
And there really is. There's car people and there's motorcycle people and there's a difference. And not like in a bad or good way. There's just a difference. Like,
there is
don't you think?
Yeah, there's definitely a difference in car and bike people.
Yeah. It's just, yeah.
They're on one side of impound. We're on the other. If there were railroad tracks dividing, I don't know who'd be on the right side or the wrong side of the tracks, though.
Yeah, I don't think there's a right or wrong. Well, I think there is, but I'm sure you think there is too.
We both have our opinions, and they might not be the same.
No, I just feel like I don't know bikes that well. I don't know that much. I feel like bike people probably know a lot more about car stuff than car people know about the bike stuff.
Some of the bike people are probably better car people than a lot of the car people in the world, but I think that can go both ways. There's a lot of car guys out there that, you talk to some of these car guys and they're like, oh, I've got this bike and I've got that bike. And,
really? Yeah.
And I think motorsports in general is a pretty open group of people that.
Yes. We're all friends.
It's just like Harley guys and the Japanese bike guys.
Yep. Yeah.
We even have subsets of the motorcycle group. So.
Yeah, that's true.
And then we got the 50 mile an hour guys, and the 50 mile an hour guys hang around with the 50 mile an hour other guys. And then you got it's all broke up into little groups out there. But at the end of the day, if a bike guy gets in the 200 mile an hour club, it doesn't matter if you're on a Honda 50 or a Hayabusa.
That's right.
We're all there to congratulate each other.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, the same goes with the car guys.
Yeah.
When we're getting a new member into the 200 mile an hour club, it's all hands on deck, and it's because we want to be there and we want to congratulate our friends on such a historic event.
Yeah. It's pretty
It doesn't even have
awesome.
to be the 200 mile an hour club. It
That's
could
right.
be
I was thinking that too. I was
some guy setting his first record or whatever the reason is. It's a great
fun.
group of people.
It is. It is an amazing group of people. And it's just, it is a very, and that's why I like name the podcast Legendary, because it really is people setting, it's just a legendary feeling out there and legends being said. And I don't know, it just has a feel of that to it. And I don't know. I just like how you're explaining it. It just is like a great group of people that I'm sure there's other places that you get it, but I've just never experienced it like quite like out there, I guess.
Yeah. We look at what it takes to be a legend in anything, and the guy that pulls off the freeway and shows up and he sees this group of people out there that's at the craziest car and motorcycle show he's ever seen in his life. And it could be a guy that's not even an impound. He's just out there playing around on a bike that he's had since he was a kid. And to that guy off the freeway, looking at this guy on the bike that he's had since he was 12 playing around on the Salt Flats, that guy's a legend in that guy's mind.
Yeah.
And
exactly.
Just even the guy that pulled off the freeway that took the time to come out and check the race out. Now he's a legend to his friends in Oklahoma.
That's right.
Because he's been to the Salt.
Yeah, that's right.
So what does it really mean to be a legendary figure at the Salt Flats? I think you just got to show up.
Yeah, I do. Absolutely. I think you're absolutely right. That's a good point. So, well, in showing up, you showing up for any other new plans or any goals or any future things that you're doing, or what are you currently working on? You're currently working on getting these records, the 2 club records. Is that your kind of?
That's the goal. There's a couple records that I want to get over 300 that I know that we could do. Especially some of the earlier blown sidecar streamlined records. Because basically we can make the same horsepower with any of our Hayabusa platforms. It's just, how much boost are we going to give it, and is it going to live? And we think we have enough of a proven platform where we can go faster than we did in the past, just knowing what we know now. So we want to bump a couple over 300. We definitely want to go faster than I have a 320 mile an hour exit speed, and I'd like to bump that. I'd really like to get around 350, 360 mile an hour. And
Michelle's over here shaking her head. Like, oh, okay.
Well,
yeah, that's fast.
Right here next to Sam, next to Ralph Hudson, we have the Attack bike sitting on the shelf, and I look at the bike that's going to be the first over 400 over there, and just that little model is like, well, can I do that?
What can I do? Yes,
Yeah, so 400, that would be great.
Yeah.
I asked Danny Thompson if I could trade him hats because I was wearing out the blue one. And he says, well, you just got to go earn it. So I think I'll take that from Danny.
Oh, there you go.
I should just go get a black hat.
That's crazy.
Nothing to it, huh? All I got to do is go 400.
I can't even imagine 400 on a bike.
Oh, I can. I imagine it all the time.
I'm sure you do.
It's funny. The faster you go, the slower it feels. You know, when I was playing around,
slows down.
Yeah. When I was playing around with the little bikes, it's like it was, you know, when you're going 80 mile an hour, it feels like you're going 80 mile an hour.
Yeah.
But when you're going 200 mile an hour, it feels like you're going about 150. When you're going 300, it feels like you're going 10. It feels like you can look out and count the grains of salt on your way past.
Oh, I don't know. When I was going 200 and something, I was like, oh, this is pretty fast.
In a roadster?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, anybody going over about the speed limit in a roadster is crazy. So they like to go backwards more than they like to go frontwards.
Yes, I've done that before.
I've seen enough tonneau covers go about 200 feet in the air when they spin backwards and it just goes.
Oh, I know. Yeah.
But crazy.
No, it was fun. But I do remember at one point being like, oh my gosh, this is fast. Like I'm going really fast. But that's 400 on a motorcycle. And I do love that. I like how you're like, I think about it all the time. Like this is like, what is amazing about this sport is just like this, just like, and it's in my intro, this ordinary people and regular people. I mean, you're not, not to say that you're ordinary, but you're not.
I'm pretty ordinary.
Yeah. I mean, you're a guy working, raising a family and looking to go 400 miles an hour on a motorcycle. And that's what makes it so amazing is it's something that somebody that's listening to this, maybe that, is like, maybe I could do that. And maybe I could just be spectating at one point, you know, and then be thinking about going 400 miles an hour in a motorcycle at some other point, which is what makes the sport so unique in my mind.
So I'm a third generation miner. My grandpa worked for Kennecott in Ely, and my dad worked there when he was old enough to get into the mining industry as well. And then my whole childhood we spent kind of chasing the mines around. And then after high school, I went to college and got a degree in business because the last thing I wanted to do was be a gold miner. And then I thought to myself, this is a pretty darn good trade. Once I started seeing what was actually out there in the world, that's when I started thinking about what I needed to do to change my career focus and go to school for something that would be functional in the mining industry. Mm-hmm. So, you know, after high school, when I got into college and had a little more experience on what it took to make a living, it's like, okay, well, I don't have a trust fund. I'm probably not going to hit the mega bucks. I need to figure out how I'm going to make a decent living to provide for my family and do the things that I want to do. And, you know, I'm just a regular guy. I go to work 40 hours a week and sometimes more. Mm-hmm. We have an annual shutdown every April that pretty much makes it impossible to work on motorcycles because we'll work for a month straight. And it's part of life. You got to do what you got to do to foot the bills. And I'm very fortunate to be in such a good industry as mining. And actually, my work has a lot of crossover into kind of the electronic side of what we're doing with the motorcycle. I get to try a lot of things out in theory at work that definitely trades over. And, you know, you can be anything. You could be a body guy that knows how to do paint and body. You could be a welder that knows how to weld, you know, any kind of tubing, a pipe fit or whatever. Right. You know, there's just so many different trades that land speed racing uses. Mm-hmm. None of us are experts in everything.
That's right.
So, you know, we've got this pretty big friend group that everybody's got a talent. Mm-hmm. And I think as long as we can share our talents with all of the other people in the sport, that, you know, that's what it's all about.
And land speed racing's good at that. They like to, you know, share with each other and help each other out, you know, and work together a little bit more than, you know, other racing sports. From what I hear, I don't know. I'm not sure, but it just seems like people that are competitors with each other are willing to work with each other and willing to make it the best.
I've done a lot of racing in a lot of different sports, and I've really not met a single racer in anything from dirt bikes to boats to drag racing to circle track. I've never met a guy that wouldn't help out his neighbor, the guy in the pits next to him. It's always, if you're into motorsports in general, I think that we've all got a bond.
Yeah.
And I've never met a bad guy in motorsports.
Yeah. Yeah.
Met a couple weird guys.
There's definitely some weirdos out there.
But never a bad guy.
No, I agree. Like, it is all motorsports are, but I do feel land speed is just, maybe I'm prejudiced, but it just feels a little slightly more unique than just some of them, in my opinion. But, they're all good, I think. But I love land speed racing, so maybe, like I said, I'm a little prejudiced.
Yeah, we got to be partial to the sports we love.
Yes.
I just happen to love all the motorsports.
I do. I love all motorsports too. I do. I really do. So, but is there anything else that you want to add to anything we left out? I didn't know you were going for 400. I think that's pretty, eventually someday. Crazy. Don't
tell Mike Akatif. He might have to really step up his game and go about 500 this year. And then then I'll be maybe I'll be the second guy to 400 if I ever get there, possibly the 50th. I don't know. You never know.
Yeah. I have a feeling you might get there sooner than later.
Nobody remembers the second guy to go 400 though.
I think on a motorcycle, maybe.
Maybe.
Maybe. All right. Well, listen, remember to go to savethesalt.org. Because we've talked about how the salt got rough out there, and they really do need your help more than ever. Just donate money, buy a shirt. The end goal for Save the Salt is to set the 10-year pumping project started. Currently, there is an estimate of 206 million tons of salt byproduct on the south side of I-80. The plan is to pump 1 million tons of salt per year from the south side of I-80 to the north side of I-80, where the Salt Flats is. In order to get this accomplished, we need help from the state government, federal government, Save the Salt, and the mine. We are very disappointed in our federal government, Congressman Chris Stewart. Stewart promised but failed to put in a $50 million requisite in the 2023 budget for the $5 million requisite in the 2023 budget for the salt restoration project. Please politely let Chris Stewart and your congressman know you would like the money for the salt restoration project. If you enjoyed this episode, please like it, share it, and consider giving it a review and rating. Please go follow me on Instagram and Facebook pages under Land Speed Legends. Thanks again.
Thanks for listening to Land Speed Legends. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. In the meantime, keep up with the show on Facebook and Instagram under Land Speed Legends. Until next time.